All right, let's dive into a really cool piece of ancient history. It's a story that actually connects imperial scribes from thousands of years ago with modern-day physicists. We're going to peel back the layers on a date you might have heard before and find out what's really going on.
So you've probably seen this sentence floating around in articles or on documentaries, right? It's always presented as this neat, simple fact. The beginning of one of the world's greatest astronomical records, all kicking off in 720 BCE. Sounds straightforward enough. But, with history, the second you start poking at a simple fact, a much more interesting story always tumbles out. I mean, what does start even mean in this context? Are we supposed to believe that no one in China ever looked up and saw an eclipse before then? Yeah, that doesn't sound right at all.
So let's unpack this famous date. That 720 BCE benchmark isn't about the first time an eclipse was ever seen or even written down. It's the beginning of something way more valuable, both for historians and for scientists.
Here's the key. 720 BCE marks the beginning of a surviving record that is a continuous, datable written series. Okay, that sounds a little academic, but what it really means is that this wasn't just some random person scribbling, "Hey, the sun disappeared today." This was a regular, organized log that we can actually place on a timeline and use.
Think of it this way. A single mention of an eclipse is kind of like a friend telling you, it snowed here once, like years ago. It's a fun story, an anecdote, but you can't really do much with it. But a continuous record, that's like having a detailed year-by-year weather log. It's not an anecdote anymore. It's evidence. It's a real scientific and historical resource. And that's the power of what started around 720 BCE.
So who was doing all this incredible work? Who were these ancient data nerds? Well, to find out, we have to travel to a specific place and time, the ancient Chinese state of Lu.
The source for all of this is an absolutely amazing text called the Chunqiu, which you might know as the Spring and Autumn Annals. Now, this isn't just some dusty old logbook. This is considered the very first chronological history in all of China. It's so important that it later became one of the 5 classics of Confucianism. These eclipse records survived because they were part of this hugely significant historical work.
And get this, they weren't just casually noting an eclipse here and there. The scribes in Lu documented 36, that's right, 36 separate solar eclipses. This just shows you it wasn't a fluke, it was a systematic, dedicated effort.
But what's really mind-blowing is the sheer time span. This record of 36 eclipses covers over 240 years. We're talking about generations of scribes, passing down this duty of observing and recording these incredible celestial events. It's just an amazing commitment. So that brings up the big question. Why? Why were they so obsessed with this? It definitely wasn't just for the love of science as we think of it today. The motivation was something else entirely. When we see an eclipse today, we think about orbital mechanics. We know it's a predictable shadow. It's awesome, but it's a natural phenomenon. But back in ancient China, an eclipse was seen as a powerful cosmic warning, a political omen. It could be a sign that the harmony between heaven and earth was broken, and that was a very, very big deal. See, for them, the sky and the state were deeply, fundamentally connected. An unusual event up in the heavens could be interpreted as a direct comment on how well the ruler was doing their job. So the court astronomers had a political duty to watch the sky. Keeping these careful records was a way of showing that the state was legitimate, that it was paying attention. Astronomy was literally statecraft. And here's where the story takes this absolutely fantastic turn. Those politically motivated records, jotted down with brushes and ink all those centuries ago, have become unbelievably valuable to modern science. So here's how it works. The scribes in Luji recorded an eclipse with a specific date, down to the ruler's year, the month, and the day. Today, astronomers can use supercomputers to calculate exactly when and where eclipses should have been visible thousands of years ago. And when the ancient Chinese text and the modern computer model match up, well, that's when history and astronomy confirm each other. It's this amazing cross-check across millennia. And honestly, here's the coolest part of the whole thing. These ancient scribes obviously weren't trying to help out some 21st century physicists, but that's exactly what their careful work does. Because these records are so precise, scientists can use them to study tiny, almost imperceptible long-term changes in the speed of Earth's rotation. How amazing is that? And this story isn't over. It's not some dusty finished chapter in a history book. The work of understanding these ancient texts is still going on, with new discoveries being made even now.
For instance, really recent research has zeroed in on an eclipse from July 17, 709 BCE, as possibly being the earliest total solar eclipse that has a solid, reliable date in these records. It just goes to show you that historians and astronomers are still actively solving these ancient puzzles.
So, let's bring it all home. What is 720 BCE? It's not the first eclipse ever seen. It's what we could call historical shorthand. It's a convenient, useful benchmark for the moment when this incredible, surviving, systematic series of observations began in the state of Lu.
And that kind of leaves us with a final thought, doesn't it? These ancient records show us that history is rarely about simple dates. It's always about context and motivation and legacy. It really makes you wonder, what other simple facts that we just take for granted are really just doorways to a much deeper and way more fascinating story?